Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today I have come with a new topic, which is tax implications of international investments. Okay, so what is tax implications of international investments? Every Indian entity nowadays are going huge board on investing abroad, but what is the taxation concern is also one of the very deciding factor and determining factor while investing abroad or outside. So I think let's start with some very few basics about taxation. Number one, there are two types of taxes. हमेशा दो तरह के taxes होते हैं, right? One is direct tax and the another one is indirect tax. One is direct tax and the other one is indirect tax. Indirect tax, we further break it up into domestic tax and international tax. So we are going to read the implications from overall direct tax perspective कि कोई भी transaction अगर हम करते हैं which is international in nature, so what will be the tax implication? There will be domestic tax and there will be international tax involved. Number two, scope of tax charge. Whenever we talk about taxation, one of the very basics is residential status. Be it an individual or be it a company, we have to see whether the particular entity, which is either an individual or the company, is resident or not in India. Only then we will further move or proceed for determining the taxation. Until and unless it is clear as to what is the residential status of that particular individual, it would be difficult for us to determine the taxation of that for that particular entity. So let's suppose I talk about an individual. As far as an individual is concerned, there are two basic conditions. Number one, the individual must be resident in India for 182 days or more during the preceding financial year. In taxation, there are two kind of years. One is preceding year, that is previous year, and the another one is assessment year. So let's suppose I am sitting in assessment year 2021. My previous year would be 2019-20, for which will be assessed in this year, which is known as assessment year, and that is known as 2021, right? So I have to see whether the individual is resident or not if he or she stays in India for a period of 182 days or more during the preceding year. Number two, or the individual stays in India for 60 days during the preceding financial year and 365 days during the 4 immediately preceding financial years. If he does not satisfy the condition number 1, but he satisfies the condition number 2, that he stays in India for a period of 60 days during the preceding financial year and he stays for a period of 365 days in aggregate during the preceding 4 financial years, then he will also be termed as resident. Okay. Now as far as resident is concerned, there are two kinds of resident. Number one, resident and ROR, resident and the ordinary resident. And number two, that is R and OR, that is resident and not ordinarily resident. If I talk about ROR, that is resident and ordinary resident, the individual must have stayed in India for a period of 2 out of 10 preceding financial years. For a period of 2 out of 10 preceding financial years. And or he must have stayed for a period of 730 days during the preceding last 7 years. If any of these two conditions are met, that individual will be considered as a resident and ordinarily resident, right? Otherwise, he or she would be termed as non-resident. No. If he or she does not satisfy condition number 1, then he or she will be termed as non-resident. But the next clause which I mentioned of 2 out of 10 previous financial years or 730 days or more during the preceding 7 financial years, in that particular case, if he or she does not meet condition number 2, then he or she is not non-resident. He or she is resident and not ordinarily resident. Resident and not ordinarily resident. Then we move forward to company. As far as company is concerned, when is the company termed to be resident in India? There are two conditions. Either that company should be an Indian company, or the place of effective management must be wholly located in India. Either the company must be an Indian company, number one condition, or the number two condition is the place of effective management must be wholly situated or wholly located in India for a company to be termed as resident, right? Number third, what all types of income can come into picture? So I would say there are three kinds of income that can come into picture. Okay. Number one, income received or deemed to be received in India. Number one, income received or deemed to be received in India. Number two, income accrued or deemed to accrue in India. Number third, income accruing inside India. For an Indian resident, each and every income would be taxable, whether it is income received or deemed to be received in India, whether it is income accrued or deemed to accrue or arise in India, or not, the income accruing outside India. For an Indian resident, global income is taxable. But when I talk about a non-resident, for him, only these first two incomes would be taxed and not the third one. Which are the first two incomes? Number one, income received or deemed to be received in India, or accrues or deemed to accrue or arise in India. These two incomes will be taxed in India for a non-resident. Number four, tax implications of foreign activities. What are the tax implications of foreign activities? Number one, as far as capital expenditure is concerned, no deduction is allowed. It is not a tax deductible item. The order. Investment in a plant and machinery or land and building is not tax deductible. Number two, loss. Any loss which arises, the revenue loss which arises on account of your business, ordinary business, that would be allowed as a tax deductible item. Number third, I would like to mention the particular case law of Satluj Cotton Mills, wherein it was held that since the business was operating internationally, it had some foreign currency in its balance sheet. So as on every balance sheet date, we have to revalue the foreign currency lying with us as to what is its value in INR. As on the balance sheet date, we have to revalue that, right? So there may be exchange gain or there may be exchange loss. And as per this case ruling, it is clearly mentioned or it is clearly determined that the exchange loss or gain arising on account of foreign currency would be termed as trading profit or loss and would be allowed for as a tax deductible item in the tax computation, right? Number fifth and the last topic for this particular session is, because I am talking from an overall perspective of Indian entity. After that will be in another session I will be considering the tax implications of the foreign activities of a non-resident for a non-resident. This was all about what will be the taxation for an Indian resident of its international or foreign operations. So let me discuss my last point. My last point is tax incentives for earnings in foreign currency. Now the government wants to promote exports and curb or reduce imports. Always it has been like that. To balance, to make the what you call in economics balance of trade favorable. It is very favorable if our exports is greater than our imports and not vice versa. So in order to boost exports, in order to incentivize exports, the government has been introducing or announcing various exports incentives from time to time. Okay, so there are certain tax incentives. In terms of taxation, there are also certain tax incentives for earnings in foreign currency. What are those? I'll be discussing four types. Number one, there is a zone which is known as special economic zone. So, for example, any company which operates out of special economic zone, it has got certain tax incentives. Number one, import without payment of custom duty. It can import products without paying custom duty. How good is that? and that can only happen if you operate in special economic zone. Okay, designated special economic zones. Number 2, no MAT and no service tax. There is no requirement of paying minimum alternate tax, and there is also no requirement of payment of service tax, which used to happen. Now it is GST, right? Number 3, the entity can borrow up to $500 million during that financial year. It can borrow up to $500 million if it operates out of special economic zone. Number 4, and a very important tax incentive. What's that? For the first 5 financial years, 100% profit exemption. I repeat, 100% profit exemption during the first 5 years, and 50% profit exemption during the next successive 5 years. So for a period of 10 financial years, there is a huge tax incentive for that particular entity. For the first 5 years, 100% profit is exempt, and for the other 5 years, percent of the entire profit is exempt. Okay. Number 2, free trade zone. Like special economic zone, the government has also formed free trade zone. Free trade zone, again in free trade zone, if you operate for 1 to 10 years, 100% of the profit is exempt. 100%. Number 3, export oriented units. Now there are certain export oriented units. Means the entities which are meant solely and exclusively for export. They don't do any domestic sales. They are made for 100% export. What is the benefit of being an export oriented unit or being operating under an export oriented unit scheme? What's that? Number 1, 100% export scheme. There is also a now how these EOUs are designed. As an export oriented unit, you may be required to operate in a free trade zone or a special economic zone, and you may also operate out of software technology parks. There are many IT industries which are becoming booming industries, and which do 100% export. They have no domestic sales in India. They only do 100% export. So the government, to incentivize them, have developed certain software technology parks and certain electronic hardware technology parks. So if they operate out of those, the 100% of the profit would be exempt. Number 4, exporting certain articles. For example, there are certain industries which use wood, yani ki lakdi, as raw material. For them also there are certain provisions and tax incentives. So I think, guys, this was all. I have summed up what is the tax implication and gave you in brief a glimpse of how taxation looks like for international investments. I'll be covering or continuing this topic in detail in my next session. Till then, stay tuned. Bye bye.